If you are someone who's been resilient, high achieving, been able to get things done, and all of a sudden you're dealing with panic attacks or anxiety or emotional overwhelm, and you're wondering what the heck is going on, a lot of these women consider themselves to be very strong and are very strong, very resilient, have a really positive outlook. And because I'm a Christian, most of the women who come and work with me are Christians as well. They have a strong faith, and they don't understand why all of a sudden this anxiety, overwhelm, burnout, panic, however they're experiencing that, has kind of overtaken, and they're confused. And I'm going to explain why. So my name is Rochelle Walsh. I'm a complex trauma therapist, have been for many years. In my clinical specialty, I dealt with a lot of things coming from early life experiences, emotional dysregulation. I now have a 90-day program, Joyful and Present, for Christian women wanting to break free from overwhelm. And we do that through neuroscience-based strategies paired with faith. So back to the answer to your question, why all of a sudden the anxiety? Why the panic when I've been so resilient and able to be so self-reliant all of my life? And here's why. So when someone says something like that, I've always just been able to do things all on my own, I'm the go-to person, they oftentimes learned very early in life that there was a sense of comfort or control in being able to kind of just achieve. I call it, the 3 Ps, like please, perform, produce. I can't even remember where I learned that in training, but it's applicable. But when we're stuck in that constant fight or flight, a lot of people won't know that that's actually fight or flight. That if I'm constantly people pleasing, constantly overperforming, and stuck on producing things, that is actually how fight or flight, hypervigilance, is played out. So people might be able to connect with, I'm an overthinker or I'm a worrier, but they really just kind of minimize it. Like it's just part of my type A, or I'm just a real driven person, and not recognize that probably those things came into play in early life where for some reason it was helpful. Now, even though I'm a trauma therapist, I'm a big believer in you do not have to go into the past to be able to change the imprint that it has on the nervous system right now. But when people have lived under chronic stress, their system is habituated to cortisol and epinephrine, as well as the behavioral patterns that go with that. So someone may say, I'm just happy all the time, and I'm the kind of person that doesn't cry. Well, now all of a sudden they're overwhelmed with, panic or anxiety, or they might say, I don't know why all of a sudden I'm fearful. I have always been the go-getter that gets things done. I'm the one everyone else comes to. Well, what happens is when we are in that chronic stress response for a long time, even though it's very adaptive and it really probably really helped us, achieve and get beyond the circumstances that it came from, this can also happen when there is a prolonged period of chronic stress later in life. But when that happens, not only is that habituated in our nervous system and at a cellular level, but there's been a lot of emotions repressed. And repression is different than suppression. So repression means it's held in the system before we're even aware of it. So while people are pleasing, producing, performing, while they are achieving and operating at a very high level, their system is holding emotions that can't be expressed, and those are held in the body. And so as time goes on, there's a few things that happen. Number one is the stress response that we have at age, let's say 15, takes a cumulative effect on us. It's not the same as we experience it when we're 30 or 40 or 50, because the longer inflammation and stress goes on in the nervous system, the more it impacts us, right? It takes a toll on the body. Chronic stress is the number one predictor of premature death and disease. So your system essentially gets fatigued from sprinting. Your nervous system is, if you want to think about it, sprinting. It's not at a rest and digest. It's at a functioning at a much higher level, higher beta brain waves, higher heart rate. So people start to feel the mounting impact of that. The system gets worn down. So people will get things like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, autoimmunity, metabolic issues. And also then as it builds and builds, then something happens and all of a sudden there's a panic attack, or all of a sudden the anxiety feels overwhelming. It's really not all of a sudden. It's that I've been carrying it, and finally something causes it to be more than we can handle, right? Surpass our threshold. And so essentially the first reason is we just get fatigued over time, because it really, even though you may say, well, the panic started a year ago, my first panic attack was 2 years ago or a year ago, or this is the first time it's felt out of control. Just because we adapt to something doesn't mean it's healthy for us. So chances are it's been going on for a long time and building, and now it's presenting itself, and it starts to impact more systems of the body, right? So, our digestive issues, the longer that goes on, the more our digestive issues then send a signal to our brain that things aren't okay, the more neurotoxins we get. So it's just kind of a perfect storm, and our system gets fatigued. We can't carry it for decades and decades and not have it hit a boiling point. The second reason is that something comes up in life, something that is emotionally charging. So maybe it's a loss, maybe it's a loss of a job, or a real stressful situation, or a conflict, a betrayal, or sometimes even really positive emotions like having a baby or getting married, or your child goes off to college, and there's emotions. Because a lot of people that have been in high hypervigilance, high chronic stress responses, is that because the emotions are held, when big emotions come up, maybe they did not have any help when they were younger moving through emotions. So they operate by taking care of things, taking care of people, doing things. And if things are okay on the outside, then they feel okay and in control. But then something happens that's out of control, and it opens all of this emotion up, and the emotion itself becomes a trigger for panic or anxiety, because they don't, even though they're very caring people, the women that I work with are very caring, and they have big compassionate hearts, and they love other people well. They have a hard time regulating their own emotional responses, because there's some early wiring in there where emotions weren't talked about, or there were some really hard things and they just got repressed. Now, I want to say again, this doesn't mean we have to go into how did that happen early on. All we need to know is that right now, the person doesn't have the confidence to move through those big emotions, because they might feel like they're going to be overwhelming, or if I cried, I would never stop, or I would feel out of control. I'd feel too vulnerable. So the anxiety, really heightens, ramps up to try to suppress, because it's like, oh my goodness, all these emotions are coming up. So that's the second reason. So the first time is we just get fatigued over time. The second is there's something that happens. Again, there's something that happens that triggers an emotion, and now the person is kind of in a tailspin because something's been activated and they're not sure how to deal with it. And so the more we resist emotions, the greater our stress response. The last thing is that sometimes another situation that can trigger this is that we're actually safer now. And that's the good news, right? Because a lot of people say, I've worked really hard to make sure that my life is different now than it was back then. So they might be confused because they're looking around and they're going, well, yeah, I've had some things happen, but this is nothing like what I've experienced before, nothing like what other people experience. So they dismiss it, but they're actually safer now. They actually maybe have more margin or more capacity. Maybe the kids have gone off to college and things are a little bit quieter. Maybe they're not having to fight so hard for their career because they've kind of reached their goals. Maybe they can look around and say, I have a safe home and I have a safe house, and my spouse is safe, or I have a good network of friends, or I know the truth according to my faith. And so sometimes when we're actually safer, things that have been repressed will come forward. It's like our body knowing that just like if we had a splinter that was, had gotten in there, the body would work to push that to the surface, to push it out because it knows it doesn't belong there. And sometimes we have things that have just been buried, and our system is fighting really hard to keep that all down. But then when there's greater space, greater safety, those things can come to the surface, and it's time for us to deal with those. Now, dealing with those does not mean we have to get swallowed back into the past by going into all the past story of everything that happens. What it means is that we need to move through the way the body is releasing those stored responses, and the way we are able to meet those emotions so that we cannot hold those in anymore. Toxins held good, whether it's pollution from something in our environment, or if it's some unhealthy pattern or a repressed trauma that's held in there, it's not going to be good for us. So sometimes actually when we're safer now and we have the capacity, those things will push themselves forward. And then of course there are things in our environment that something happened, maybe a betrayal or an injury, or something happens to somebody that we love. And again, the emotions are overwhelming and there's panic that comes up, and now all of a sudden the panic has become its own traumatic event, like the person's always guarding against, because anytime they feel a sensation in their body or sense that stress response, they're fearful that they're going to go into panic. So there are many reasons why it can come up, even if someone says, I've been someone who's very resilient and always powered through things. In fact, I almost look at that as giving me a lot of information. If someone says, I've always just been the person to push through, I'm not a crier, I can handle things, oftentimes what that means is I had to handle hard things on my own early on, and I adapted by operating at a very high level of that stress response, and it's very familiar to me. And so I don't know why it was almost my norm, and now I don't know why all of a sudden I can't handle things. Many people don't even realize that they can feel so much better, not only to relieve the current day panic or intense acute anxiety they're feeling right now, but that we can really lower their baseline. So someone in my group recently posted a picture of her Apple Watch showing that, her resting heart rate had been lower for 4 weeks. She'd been in the program, she said 5 to 6 weeks, and for 4 weeks had been down. That's what we want, is a lower baseline. So it's not just about treating that thing that the panic is around. It's about helping people create new neural pathways so that they can be calm, safe, and secure, and they're not operating up here. They actually have a lower baseline where they feel safe in their body, where they're not in chronic stress, when they get to a deep sense of safety within their body and who they are, and they don't have to please, perform, produce. They're just okay being. And that doesn't mean that they're less successful or less driven. It just means they can do it from a place of creativity and freedom and just living in the full out purpose that God has for them, rather than constantly trying to have to be in that performance mode so that they don't experience their own feelings. When we can give them that lower baseline, that greater capacity to really feel into their emotions, they develop so much confidence that not only can I handle what's going on right now, but that I can, access joy and presence, and I will be much better prepared for things that happen in the future. Because when we know that we can move through emotions or losses, it's not that we want those things to happen, but we recognize that they're part of life. And when we can have confidence that we can move through those, anxiety goes down, right? We don't have to constantly be on guard for what may happen, because we trust that we are safe and secure within. And so panic attacks are not for no reason. They don't come up randomly. They do come up as a result of chronic stress that goes on too long, or situations that just overwhelm the system. And we can always get to the other side of that by being able to, calm from within. So I understand that it's easy to want to reach for something that can calm us down in the moment, whether that's something at the pharmacy or something in, a glass of wine, or shopping online, or whatever we may go to kind of take us out of that space. But trust me, like, those things are band-aids. They do not work, right? It's not, you don't need to read another self-help book. You don't need to know anything different. What you need to do is have strategies that really help us calm the nervous system so that we can build capacity. And so if you're having panic attacks, or anxiety, or overwhelmed with emotion, be kind to yourself. Don't dismiss it. Don't tell yourself that you're silly for feeling that way, that other people are handling so much more, or this is crazy that you can't overcome it because you've been through way harder things. Just really listen to that and have compassion for that, and know that it is a warning light going off, telling you there's something that needs your attention and your care, and that you can, just like anything else you've achieved and learned, you can absolutely learn to do things that would help your nervous system to regulate and to be able to move through emotions. There's many strategies that can be incorporated. I always tell people this, but it's very important to do the right things in the right order. So if we're trying to learn things up here, whether that's, thought stopping and building tools, it's not that those things aren't powerful, but in a panic attack, somebody telling you to relax or telling you to just think about sunshiny thoughts, that really doesn't help when you're having a lower brain autonomic nervous system response, like what happens with a panic attack. So it's really important to do small strategic steps, things like breath work and meditation and vagus nerve activation and mindfulness, and incorporate practices that really bring that level down so that you can go into the deeper work of releasing some of those programs around needing to perform, or needing to be in control, or not being okay to experience emotions. And it's totally possible, right? Nothing in us is broken permanently. We can always rewire our minds, our nervous systems, and reshape. When we do the internal work, we see those results in our relationships, in our health, in our attitude towards life, and how we can move towards our goals. So if you're having panic attacks or anxiety for no reason, assume there's a very good reason, that it makes sense somewhere, and there's always a way out of it. So I hope that was helpful. Be compassionate, love yourself well. I'm a strong believer, and most of the women I work with are too, and we know that the compassion and the love that Christ has for us, and being able to receive that, is super important. It's not a lack of faith to have panic or anxiety. Sometimes there's physiological things going on, and when we can get beyond that, we can really rest in that truth that we believe, and rest in Him, and really feel connected to the inner us that sometimes we had to abandon, when we grew up too fast, or when we had to take care of things before we were ready, or or handle things that we weren't instructed or didn't learn from other people. So I hope that was helpful. If this information is helpful to you, click subscribe, listen to some of my videos. If you are interested in my 90-day Joyful and Present program, there is a link below where you can watch a masterclass I have, Secrets of the Calm Mind, explains a little bit more about the brain and the nervous system, and all the things that I teach, as well as my approach for helping women break free. So I hope this was helpful. Have a great day. See you in the next training.